The crystal glasses clinked as my father's fist came down on our mahogany dining table. "Your art is garbage. You're a disgrace, unlike your sister." His words echoed through our mansion's breakfast room, slicing through me like shards of glass. My mother nodded in agreement, her diamond earrings catching the morning light. My sister Tiffany smirked triumphant. 10 years of pursuing my passion reduced to garbage in an instant. I sat frozen, my exhibition announcement dying on my lips, as tears threatened to spill. This wasn't just another criticism. This was the final betrayal from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Growing up in our sprawling Connecticut estate, I always felt like I was born into the wrong family. My father, Richard, built his fortune in luxury real estate development, transforming modest neighborhoods into exclusive communities for the wealthy. He wore success like his tailored suits, expecting everyone around him to match his ambition. My mother, Diane, a former beauty queen turned socialite, orchestrated our family's social calendar with the precision of a military general, ensuring we maintained appearances in all the right circles. Then there was my older sister Tiffany, the golden child. With her Harvard business degree and executive position at a prestigious financial firm in New York, she embodied everything my parents valued. Each family gathering became a showcase for Tiffany's latest achievements, her face plastered across our family photos like the perfect advertisement for success. And then there was me, Elisa, the family disappointment. I chose art school instead of an Ivy League education. I pursued painting instead of finance. I valued creativity over corporate climbing. Living in our property's guest house at 28 wasn't my ideal situation, but it allowed me to focus on my art while saving for my own place. My parents made sure I understood this arrangement was temporary, a phase they were indulging until I grew up. Despite their constant dismissal of my career choice, I persevered. I spent countless nights perfecting my technique, developing my unique style that blended realism with abstract emotional elements. My dedication finally paid off when I received an email that made my heart soar. The Hamilton Gallery, one of the most respected art spaces in New York, had accepted my work for their upcoming Emerging Voices exhibition. This wasn't just any show. It was a launching pad for serious artists, carefully curated and attended by influential critics and collectors. I rehearsed how I'd share this news at our mandatory Sunday family breakfast. Maybe, just maybe, this would finally earn their respect. I dressed carefully that morning in a simple blue dress, applied minimal makeup, and even wore the pearl earrings my mother had given me for my 25th birthday, hoping to soften her perpetually critical gaze. I arrived at the main house early to help Maria, our longtime housekeeper, set the table. She smiled warmly as I arranged the fresh flowers. "You look happy today, Miss Elisa," she noted, placing a basket of freshly baked croissants on the table. "I have some good news," I whispered, not wanting to share it first with anyone, but my family still clinging to the fantasy that they would celebrate with me. The front door opened, and my sister's voice filled the foyer. "Mom, Dad, wait until you hear what happened." Tiffany strode into the dining room, immaculate in her designer pantsuit, not a strand of her sleek blonde hair out of place. My parents followed my father, checking his Rolex as if counting the minutes of family time he was sacrificing. "Good morning," I said, but my greeting was drowned out by Tiffany's announcement. "I got the promotion. I'm now the youngest senior vice president in the company's history." My parents' reactions were immediate and effusive. My mother gasped with delight, rushing to embrace Tiffany. My father's stern face broke into a rare, genuine smile. "This calls for champagne," he declared, instructing Maria to bring a bottle of Dom Perignon from the wine cellar. As they toasted Tiffany's success, I sat quietly waiting for an appropriate moment to share my own news. But before I could speak, my father dropped a bombshell that made the crystal flutes tremble in our hands. "We have a surprise for you, Tiffany. Your mother and I have decided to purchase a vacation property in the Hamptons as a gift for your achievement. We're closing on it next week." Tiffany squealed with delight, while I nearly choked on my champagne. A vacation home for a promotion, when I had been struggling to afford quality canvases for my upcoming exhibition. "That's wonderful." I managed the words, tasting bitter in my mouth. My news suddenly felt small, insignificant. But it was my truth, my achievement, and I desperately wanted them to know. As they discussed the details of Tiffany's new beachfront property, I realized with startling clarity There would never be a perfect moment to share my news in this house. There would always be something more important than my art. I have some news too, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. 3 heads turned toward me with varying degrees of interest. The Hamilton Gallery has selected my work for their Emerging Voices exhibition next month. It's a really prestigious opportunity, and... The Hamilton, my father interrupted, his brow furrowed. Is that one of those small community spaces that takes anyone? The dismissal stung. No, it's actually one of the most respected galleries in the city. They only select 12 artists for this annual exhibition, and it's attended by major critics and collectors. My mother took a delicate bite of her croissant. That's nice, dear. Is there any money in it? Or is it just another line on your resume? It's about exposure and recognition in the art world. I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Many artists who've been featured have gone on to significant careers. A critic from Art Forum reviewed my portfolio and specifically recommended me for inclusion. My father snorted. Critics. What do they know about real value? Tiffany's promotion comes with actual responsibility and a 6-figure salary increase. That's tangible success. I gripped my napkin under the table. Art has value too, Dad. Different from corporate success, but still valid. Hobby artists are a dime a dozen. Elisa, he said, cutting into his eggs Benedict with surgical precision. You went to an expensive art school, and what do you have to show for it? You're still living in our guest house at 28. Richard, my mother interjected, not in my defense, but with a more practical suggestion. Perhaps Elisa should consider finding a real job in a design firm or advertising. Something that uses her creative skills but provides actual income. Then she could paint on the weekends as a side hobby. Their words pummeled me like physical blows. A side hobby. As if the thousands of hours I'd poured into developing my craft were equivalent to occasional knitting or weekend gardening. I'm making progress, I insisted. This exhibition is a big step, but I do need a small loan to prepare properly. I need to frame the selected pieces, professionally print catalogs, and a loan. My father's voice dropped dangerously. After 4 years of art school that we paid for, after letting you live essentially rent-free in a property that could generate thousands in monthly income, I've been paying you rent. I reminded him, though we both knew the token amount was far below market value. Barely enough to cover utilities, he scoffed. While we've been subsidizing your little art fantasy, your sister has been building a real career. She's never asked for anything since graduating. The unfairness of the comparison made my chest tight. We've made different choices, but... Different choices? My father's voice rose. Tiffany chose success. You chose to waste your potential on finger painting. I flinched at the deliberately infantilizing description of my work. That's not fair. My art is. Your art is garbage, he spat, slamming his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. You're a disgrace, unlike your sister. We've indulged this fantasy long enough. My mother nodded in agreement. We've supported your failure for years, Elisa. At some point you need to grow up. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I looked to Tiffany, hoping for even a small show of solidarity. We'd had our differences, but surely she wouldn't join in this public humiliation. Instead, she reached for her designer handbag and pulled out her phone. Actually, I wanted to show you both something, she said, addressing our parents while deliberately avoiding my gaze. She swiped through her phone and handed it to our father. I stopped by Elisa's studio yesterday when she was out. Tiffany explained as my father examined whatever was on her screen. This is what her professional workspace looks like. Ice filled my veins. Tiffany had entered my private studio without permission and photographed my space, the ultimate betrayal of trust. My father's lip curled as he passed the phone to my mother. Looks like a chaotic mess to me. Is this how a serious artist works? My mother tutted in disapproval. Those paint splatters on the floor, is that permanent damage to our property? What they were seeing was my creative process, the organized chaos that fueled my work. Canvases in various stages of completion, reference materials pinned to walls, palette experiments and color studies. To their corporate minds, it looked like disorder, but to any artist, it would be recognized as the natural environment of creation. You went into my studio without asking. I finally managed to ask Tiffany, my voice barely above a whisper. She shrugged, taking back her phone. Someone needed to show them what you're really doing with their investment. That doesn't look like the workspace of someone on the verge of success. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not just my heart, but the invisible chain that had kept me tethered to their approval. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "Thank you for breakfast," I said formally, as if addressing strangers. "And thank you for making it absolutely clear where I stand in this family." I walked out without waiting for their response, their words echoing in my head. "Your art is garbage. You're a disgrace." Back in the guest house, I collapsed onto my bed, finally allowing the tears to flow freely. The sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the space I'd tried so hard to make my own within the confines of my parents' property. Canvas stretchers leaned against one wall. Sketches and color studies were pinned to a large corkboard. Books on art theory and technique filled the small bookcase. For years I'd told myself that their criticism came from a place of concern, that deep down they wanted what was best for me, that someday they would see the value in my chosen path. What a fool I'd been. This wasn't the first time they'd belittled my art, of course. There was the high school art show where my father had asked loudly why my landscapes looked so weird. The time my mother suggested I focus on pretty subjects that people actually want to buy. The countless career interventions where they'd brought brochures for law schools, MBA programs, even dental hygienist certification courses. But comparing my studio to Tiffany's corporate office was like comparing an apple to a spaceship. They served entirely different functions. And Tiffany, my own sister, had violated my private space to gather ammunition against me. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "When you've calmed down, we should discuss more practical career options. Your father knows someone at an advertising agency who might have an entry-level position available." Another buzz, this time from Tiffany. "Don't take it personally. They just want you to be successful like me." I threw my phone across the room, watching it bounce harmlessly on the armchair. Successful? Like Tiffany? What did that even mean? Working 80 hours a week to make wealthy people wealthier. Living for quarterly bonuses and annual reviews. I moved to my desk and opened my laptop, seeking distraction. An email notification caught my eye, a message from the gallery coordinator confirming some details about the exhibition. The contrast was jarring. Outside my family bubble, I was a serious artist worthy of a prestigious exhibition. Within it, I was a failure playing with paint. Something on my screen made me pause. The email had arrived during breakfast, and below it was an earlier message from my mother to several of her friends. I hadn't opened it, but the preview showed enough. Still indulging her art phase. Richard and I are at our wits' end. If only she had half of Tiffany's ambition. My hands shaking, I opened the email. It was worse than I'd imagined. My mother had been actively mocking my artistic pursuits to her social circle, sharing details of conversations I'd thought were private. There were responses too sympathetic clucking from her friends about creative types and the challenges of modern parenting, despite the fact that I was well into adulthood. Something snapped inside me. The tears dried on my cheeks as a cold clarity washed over me. I would never win their approval. Never. Not if I became the next Picasso. Not if the Museum of Modern Art dedicated a wing to my work. In their eyes, I would always be the family disappointment. So why was I still here, allowing them to make me feel small every day? I grabbed a suitcase from my closet and began methodically packing my clothes. Essential art supplies went into portfolio cases. Personal mementos were carefully wrapped and boxed. I worked with a strange calmness, as if watching someone else pack for a long-planned journey. My phone rang. Jordan, my best friend since art school. I'd texted her a brief account of the breakfast disaster while still sitting in my car outside the main house. Those entitled materialistic. Jordan didn't finish her sentence, too angry for words. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted, the simple honesty feeling like a relief. "But I will be. I'm leaving Jordan. Today. I can't do this anymore." "About time," she said firmly. "My spare room is yours for as long as you need it. Want me to come help you pack?" "No, I need to do this myself." I told her, grateful for the offer, but knowing this was a journey, I needed to begin alone. I'll be there by evening. As I continued packing, I came across a file box where I kept important documents. Inside were my birth certificate, passport, insurance information, and a folder of financial documents I didn't recognize. Curious. I opened it. The contents made my blood run cold. Bank statements, wire transfers, employment contracts with revealing annotations. For years, my parents had been secretly funding Tiffany's successful career with massive cash infusions. They had purchased her condo outright while telling me they'd only co-signed her mortgage. They had paid off her student loans while insisting she'd done it herself through smart financial planning. Most shocking of all, they had been subsidizing her salary through direct payments to her company, essentially buying her promotions while she pretended to earn them through merit. The hypocrisy was staggering. They had berated me for living in their guest house while paying minimal rent, calling it a handout. Meanwhile, they had been bankrolling every aspect of Tiffany's supposedly self-made success. I sat on the floor surrounded by these papers, trembling with a potent mixture of rage and vindication. All those years of being compared unfavorably to my successful sister, when her success was largely purchased by the same parents who had refused to support my career in even the smallest ways. The revelation crystallized my decision. I needed to leave not just physically, but completely. I needed to sever the psychological hold they had over me and build my life on my own terms. But first, I would leave them a parting gift. The idea came to me fully formed, like the best artistic inspirations often do. I would create a final piece of art for my family, one that told the truth about who we really were. I cleared space in my studio and selected 3 large canvases. A triptych, 3 panels that would work together to tell a complete story. I worked with a feverish intensity, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Hours blended together as I channeled all my pain, anger, and newfound determination into the work. The first panel depicted the public face of our family, the perfect, successful Grants. I painted us as we appeared in our annual Christmas card, immaculately dressed, posed on the grand staircase of the main house. Father proud and commanding, mother elegant and poised, Tiffany accomplished and confident, me slightly apart, the odd piece that didn't quite fit the perfect picture. But I incorporated subtle details that hinted at the reality beneath the surface. The tightness around my mother's carefully composed smile, the possessive way my father's hand gripped Tiffany's shoulder, the calculated distance between me and the rest of the group. The second panel revealed the hidden truth. Using a technique that involved layers of translucent paint, I created an image that changed depending on the viewing angle. From one perspective, it showed my parents literally propping up Tiffany, their hands, positioning her like a mannequin, while she posed with her awards and achievements. From another angle, it revealed them slipping money to shadowy figures, representing her company, buying her success, while maintaining the illusion of meritocracy. I incorporated actual fragments of the financial documents I'd discovered, collaging them into the background, where they formed a damning paper trail for anyone who looked closely enough. The third panel was my liberation. I painted myself breaking free from chains that bound me to the family estate, stepping into a bright open landscape filled with possibility. Behind me, the shadow of the family mansion receded into darkness. Ahead, an empty canvas awaited my true expression. As I worked on this final panel, I discovered an old art book that had belonged to my grandmother, my father's mother. She had died when I was just 8 years old, but I had vague memories of sitting in her lap while she showed me how to mix colors. My father rarely spoke of her, and after her death, most of her belongings had disappeared. The book fell open to reveal an envelope tucked between its pages. Inside was a letter written in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Elisa," it began. My hands trembled as I read on. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you have found your way to art despite your father's best efforts to steer you away from it. There is something you must know. I too was an artist before I married into the Grant family and allowed my dreams to be crushed beneath the weight of social expectations and your grandfather's disapproval." I sank into a chair, stunned by this revelation. My grandmother, an artist, no one had ever told me. "Your father witnessed the conflict between his father and me over my artistic pursuits," the letter continued. "He was taught that art was a frivolous distraction, not a worthy career. I fear he has carried this poisonous belief into his own parenting. At the bottom of the letter was a key and an address for a storage facility not far from our home. Here you will find my paintings and a trust I have established in your name. Your grandfather never knew about either. The money is modest by grant standards, but enough to give you freedom to pursue your art without dependency. Use it when you are ready to spread your wings. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears flowing freely now. My grandmother had seen me, truly seen me, even when I was just a child. She had recognized a kindred spirit and prepared a lifeline for me across time. With renewed purpose, I finished the triptych, incorporating subtle references to my grandmother in the final panel, a bird soaring above the landscape that resembled the signature she had used on the letter. When the paint was dry, I carefully photographed each panel and the complete triptych from multiple angles, ensuring I had a perfect record of the work. Then I wrapped the panels and carried them to the main house. It was mid-afternoon and I knew my parents would be out, father at his office, mother at her weekly salon appointment. Maria let me in with a concerned look. "Are you okay, Miss Elisa?" This morning was. She trailed off diplomatic, even in her sympathy. "I'm fine, Maria. Better than fine, actually. I'm moving out today. I just need to drop something off." Her eyes widened. "Moving. Where will you go?" "Somewhere new. Somewhere I can be myself." I carried the wrapped panels to the foyer where my parents displayed their most impressive art acquisitions pieces, bought not for love, but for investment value and social prestige. I carefully hung my triptych in the center of the wall, where it would be impossible to miss by anyone entering the house. Beside it, I placed a handwritten note. "This is my final contribution to the Grant family collection. Consider it payment for years of room and board. I'm moving out and will be financially independent from now on. I'll still be in the Hamilton Gallery exhibition, but I'll do it without your help. Thank you for making it crystal clear where I stand in this family. Now I know exactly where I belong, anywhere but here. Elisa." I took one last look around the house where I'd grown up, but never truly belonged. Then I walked out the front door without looking back. My car was packed with everything that mattered. My clothes, essential art supplies, and most importantly, my grandmother's letter and key. My past fit into a sedan, but my future stretched out before me, boundless and bright. Jordan's apartment was tiny compared to what I was used to, but the warmth of her welcome made it feel more like home than the guest house ever had. "Holy crap, Elisa," she said, after I told her everything, including the discovery about Tiffany's funded success and my grandmother's letter. We sat at her small kitchen table, mugs of tea between us. "That's like something from a movie. What was in the storage unit?" "I haven't gone yet," I admitted. "I came straight here." "Well, what are we waiting for?" Jordan grabbed her car keys. "Let's go right now." The storage facility was in a nondescript building in a commercial area. I felt strangely nervous as I approached the unit number from my grandmother's letter. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Inside, covered in protective cloths, were dozens of paintings. Jordan helped me uncover them one by one, revealing works of stunning beauty and emotional depth. Landscapes, portraits, abstract compositions that seemed to capture pure feeling on canvas. "These are incredible," Jordan breathed. "Your grandmother was seriously talented." "No one ever told me," I said, touching the corner of a canvas reverently. All these years I thought I was the only artist in the family. In the back of the unit was a small, fireproof safe. My grandmother's key opened this too, revealing legal documents and a bank book for a trust in my name that had been accumulating interest for 20 years. The amount wasn't vast by my parents' standards, as my grandmother had said, but it was enough to give me breathing room enough for first and last month's rent on a modest apartment, basic living expenses, while I established myself and proper materials for my exhibition. I sat among my grandmother's paintings, feeling her presence surrounding me. "She knew," I said softly. "Somehow she knew I would need this someday." "She recognized another artist's soul," Jordan said, squeezing my shoulder. Over the next week, I threw myself into building my new life. I found a small but affordable studio apartment in Brooklyn with enough space for a basic workspace. I used some of my inheritance to purchase essential supplies and have my exhibition pieces professionally framed. Meanwhile, my phone exploded with messages from my family. At first, they seemed merely annoyed by my dramatic exit, as my mother called it. Then the tone shifted dramatically once they discovered my special gift. "What have you done?" My father's text came in all capitals. "Come remove this immediately." "This is completely inappropriate," my mother wrote. "We had the Vandermeers over for dinner, and they saw that awful painting. How could you embarrass us this way?" Tiffany's message was the most revealing. "You had no right to expose private family matters. Dad is furious about the financial documents. He's talking about cutting you off completely." I laughed out loud at that one. Hard to cut off someone who's already left, I told Jordan. But the messages grew increasingly desperate as days passed. "Your father can't sleep," my mother texted. "Please call us." "This isn't funny anymore," from Tiffany. "Do you know what you've done to my reputation?" From mutual connections in our social circle, I learned that my special gift had indeed caused the panic I'd intended. The Vandermeers, one of the most influential families in my parents' world, had seen the triptych and asked pointed questions about its meaning. Word had spread quickly through their social set that all was not as it seemed with the perfect Grant family. Tiffany was facing uncomfortable questions at work about her qualifications and rapid rise through the company ranks. My parents were scrambling to contain the damage to their carefully constructed social image. I ignored all their messages, focusing instead on preparing for the exhibition. I visited the Hamilton Gallery, met with the curator, and finalized the details for the show. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions without wondering how my family would react, and the freedom was intoxicating. Then came the letter from Preston and Associates, my father's longtime attorneys. "We represent the Grant family in the matter of certain defamatory artistic works currently displayed in the Grant family residence," it began, in cold legal language. It went on to demand that I withdraw from the Hamilton Gallery exhibition, immediately claiming that my art contained false and damaging representations of the Grant family that could cause irreparable harm to their reputations. Most alarmingly, it asserted that my grandmother's trust was actually part of the larger Grant family estate and demanded I surrender the funds immediately. My hands shook as I read the letter. They were trying to take away everything: my exhibition opportunity, my inheritance, even my right to tell my own story through my art. I almost called. My father almost fell back into the old pattern of seeking to appease him. Then I looked at my grandmother's letter again, at her words of encouragement across time, and made a different call instead. "They can't touch your grandmother's trust," said Melissa, an attorney friend from college who specialized in estate law. She reviewed the documents over coffee in her office. "It was established separately from the family estate, with your grandmother's independent assets, and explicitly names you as the sole beneficiary upon your 21st birthday. It's legally yours." "What about the exhibition?" I asked, the letter from my father's attorney still haunting me. "That's murkier," she admitted. "They could potentially file a defamation suit if they claim your art makes false statements about them that damage their reputation. But truth is an absolute defense against defamation. If what your art suggests is factually accurate." "It is," I confirmed. "I have copies of all the financial documents." Then I'd say, "Proceed with caution, but don't back down. Just be prepared for them to escalate." Armed with Melissa's advice, I continued preparations for the exhibition. I worked with the gallery to finalize the arrangement of my pieces, wrote my artist's statement, and helped design the promotional materials. The gallery had selected 8 of my paintings for the show: explorations of identity, belonging, and personal truth, rendered in my distinctive style that balanced representation with emotional abstraction. For the exhibition, I created 2 additional pieces inspired by my recent experiences, channeling my pain and newfound freedom into some of the most powerful work I'd ever done. The night of the opening arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety churning in my stomach. Jordan helped me dress in a simple but elegant black dress that projected professional confidence. "You look like a real artist," she teased, adjusting my silver pendant necklace that had been another gift from my grandmother. "As opposed to a fake one," I laughed, but I knew what she meant. For the first time, I truly felt like a professional artist about to debut her work, not an amateur playing at a career. The Hamilton Gallery was transformed for the opening night reception. Soft lighting highlighted each piece perfectly. Wait staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The space gradually filled with gallery patrons, art critics, collectors, and the other emerging artists featured in the exhibition. I was deep in conversation with an interested collector when Jordan appeared at my elbow, her expression tense. "They're here," she whispered. I turned to see my entire family entering the gallery. My father in his impeccable suit, expression thunderous. My mother perfectly coiffed and smiling tightly at acquaintances, while her eyes darted around looking for me. Tiffany uncharacteristically subdued, trailing behind them. "Excuse me," I said to the collector. "I need to handle something." I approached my family, heart pounding but spine straight. "This is unexpected. I don't recall sending you an invitation." "We need to talk, my father," said his voice low, but intense, privately, now. "This isn't the time or place," I replied evenly. "I have guests to attend to." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed, stepping closer. "The Wilsons have withdrawn from our charity gala. The Pierponts are suddenly reconsidering their investment in my new development. All because of your spiteful little art project." "Richard," my mother cautioned, glancing around nervously. "Not here. You will withdraw from this exhibition immediately," my father continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "And you will return to the house to remove that monstrosity from our foyer." "No," I said simply. The single word seemed to shock him more than any argument could have. In all my years, I had never directly refused him. "What did you say?" he demanded, his face flushing. I said no. I won't withdraw from the exhibition. I won't remove my work from your house. You're welcome to take it down yourself if you find it so offensive. And I won't be returning to live in the guest house. Ever. Tiffany stepped forward. "Elisa, be reasonable. You've made your point. Now you're just being vindictive." "Vindictive?" I laughed incredulously. "That's rich coming from the person who secretly photographed my studio to use against me." The gallery director, Helena Pierce, approached our group. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, her gaze moving between me and my family. "Everything's fine," my father said with forced charm. "Just a family discussion." Actually, I said my family was just leaving. They realized they came to the wrong event. Helena's eyebrows rose slightly, but she was too professional to show more reaction. "Perhaps we could continue this another time. Tonight is about celebrating these artists and their work." "Yes," my mother said, quickly taking my father's arm. "We should go, Richard. We have the Thompsons' dinner in an hour anyway." My father wasn't ready to retreat. "This isn't over," he said to me. "You can't just—" "I believe the artist asked you to leave," came a deep voice from behind us. We all turned to see Marcus Holloway, one of the most influential art collectors on the East Coast. I recognized him from art magazines but had never expected to meet him, much less have him intervene on my behalf. "This is a family matter," my father began, but Marcus cut him off. "This is an art exhibition, and you're disturbing the artist, whose work I'm extremely interested in discussing." He turned to me. "Miss Grant, I've been studying your pieces for the past hour, and I'm absolutely captivated by the emotional honesty in your work. The technical skill is impressive, but it's the authentic voice that truly sets it apart." He handed me his business card. "I'd like to purchase your entire collection from this exhibition if it's available. And I'm interested in commissioning additional pieces for my foundation's new headquarters." The gallery fell silent around us. Even my father seemed momentarily speechless. "Thank you, Mr. Holloway," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'd be honored to discuss that with you." "Excellent," he smiled. "And please call me Marcus." He nodded coolly to my family and moved away, leaving us in an awkward silence. My father looked as if he'd been slapped. Marcus Holloway moved in exactly the circles my parents had always aspired to join, and he had just dismissed them while praising me. "We should go," my mother said again, tugging my father's arm. He allowed himself to be led toward the exit, but turned back to deliver one parting shot. "When this little art fantasy inevitably fails, don't come crawling back." "I won't," I promised, watching them leave with Tiffany trailing behind, glancing back at me with an unreadable expression. As the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. They had come to intimidate me, to drag me back into the family fold on their terms, and they had failed completely. Helena touched my arm gently. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath and smiled. Better than okay. I think I'm finally free. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and yes, sales. Marcus Holloway was true to his word, purchasing my entire collection for a sum that left me momentarily speechless. Other collectors, perhaps influenced by his interest, approached me about future work. Art critics from several publications asked thoughtful questions about my technique and influences. One particularly respected critic, Lydia Chen from Art Forum, spent 20 minutes discussing the emotional layers in my work. There's something remarkably authentic about your paintings, she told me. A vulnerability that never descends into sentimentality. I'll be watching your career with great interest. By the end of the night, I had sold every piece, received 3 commission offers, and been invited to submit work for 2 upcoming themed exhibitions at other respected galleries. As Jordan and I shared a celebratory drink after the last guests had departed, Helena handed me a thick envelope. Your proceeds from tonight, she explained. Minus the gallery's percentage, of course. I must say, Elisa, this is the most successful debut I've seen in years. I stared at the envelope, trying to process that it contained more money than I'd ever had at one time. Money I'd earned through my art. Without my family's help or approval. I think your grandmother would be proud, Jordan said softly as we left the gallery. I think she would, I agreed, looking up at the night sky. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The success of the Hamilton Gallery exhibition marked the beginning of my true independence. With the proceeds from my sales and Marcus Holloway's commission, I was able to lease a proper studio space in addition to my apartment. I established a daily work routine, created a professional website, and began building the foundation of a sustainable career. But financial success wasn't the only change in my life. The emotional freedom that came from breaking away from my family's toxic influence transformed my work. My paintings gained a new depth and confidence that critics and collectors noticed and appreciated. 3 months after the exhibition, I used some of my earnings to establish a small mentorship program for young artists from underprivileged backgrounds. I remembered how isolating it had felt to pursue art without support and wanted to create the guidance system I wished I'd had. I think we should name it after your grandmother, Jordan suggested as we worked out the details. The Eleanor Grant Foundation for Emerging Artists. That's perfect. I agreed, feeling that my grandmother's legacy was finally being honored. My parents made several attempts to re-establish contact, but always on superficial terms that made it clear they were more concerned about social appearances than genuine reconciliation. My mother sent formal invitations to family events. My father had his assistant call about tax documents. I maintained firm boundaries, responding politely but distantly to necessary communications, while making it clear I wasn't interested in resuming our previous relationship. Tiffany's situation had changed dramatically. Without our parents' financial support, which had been withdrawn to avoid further scandal, she was struggling to maintain her artificially inflated position at her company. 6 months after our confrontation at the gallery, I received an unexpected text from her. Can we meet, just the 2 of us? Please. Curious but cautious, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. She arrived looking less polished than I'd ever seen her, her designer clothes replaced by a simple sweater, and jeans her perfect blowout now, a practical ponytail. You look different, I observed, as she sat across from me. I feel different, she admitted. Everything's different now. Over the next hour, she told me how her carefully constructed world had unraveled after my departure. Questions about her qualifications had led to increased scrutiny of her work. Without our father's financial influence smoothing her path, she was being held to the same standards as her colleagues for the first time. I'm on probation, she confessed, staring into her coffee. They're watching every move I make. If I don't meet their expectations, I'll be let go. I'm sorry, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Don't be, she replied with unexpected candor. I needed this wake-up call. I've been living in this bubble where everything was handed to me, believing I'd earned it. Now I have to actually prove myself. That's not easy, I acknowledged. No, it's not. She looked up at me, her expression vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. How did you do it? Keep going when everyone was telling you to give up. The question surprised me. Couldn't imagine being anyone other than who I am. Every time I tried to picture myself in a corporate job or some practical career, it felt like slowly suffocating. She nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand that. For the first time, I'm questioning whether I even want this career I've been so desperate to succeed in. What would you do instead? I asked. I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about it, really thinking, for maybe the first time ever. She hesitated, then reached across the table to touch my hand briefly. I'm sorry, Elisa, for the photos of your studio, for not standing up for you, for everything. The apology was unexpected and clearly difficult for her. The old Tiffany would never have admitted wrong. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. We parted with a tentative plan to meet again the following month. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was a beginning. My parents proved more resistant to change. A year after my departure, they made their first genuine attempt at reconciliation, prompted by an article about my work in a major art publication that had been seen by their social circle. We may have been hasty in our assessment of your career, my father said stiffly, when I finally agreed to meet them for lunch at a restaurant of my choosing. What your father means, my mother interjected, is that we're proud of what you've accomplished. We always knew you had potential. I set down my fork carefully. Did you really bring me here to rewrite history? They exchanged glances. My father cleared his throat. What do you want from us, Elisa? Honesty, I said immediately. Acknowledgement of how you treated me, a genuine apology, and respect for the boundaries I set going forward. That seems rather dramatic. My mother began, but my father surprised me by raising his hand to stop her. No, Diane, she's right. He looked at me directly. We were wrong about your art. We handled everything badly, and we've paid a price for it, both socially and... He hesitated emotionally. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement, but it was more than I'd ever expected from him. Thank you for saying that, I said. Would you consider family counseling? He asked abruptly. All of us, including Tiffany, we've been talking and we both feel. We feel we've lost something important. We'd like to try to rebuild if you're willing. I studied him carefully, looking for the manipulation or ulterior motive I'd come to expect. But all I saw was an aging man who seemed smaller somehow than the towering figure who had dominated my childhood. I'll think about it, I promised. And I did. 2 years after leaving my parents' guest house, I hosted a small gathering in my studio to celebrate the completion of a major commission. Around the table sat Jordan and her new girlfriend, 2 fellow artists I'd befriended, Melissa the attorney, and somewhat awkwardly, but making an effort, my family. We weren't healed, that would take more time, and continued effort on all sides. The weekly counseling sessions had been difficult, with many setbacks and painful confrontations. But we were learning to communicate honestly, to respect boundaries, and most importantly, to see each other as we actually were, rather than as projections of our expectations. My mother was learning to ask about my work with genuine interest rather than barely disguised disapproval. My father was practicing listening without immediately offering solutions. Tiffany, who had eventually left her finance position to pursue a teaching career that she found far more fulfilling, and I were slowly rebuilding our sisterhood on more equal footing. As I looked around the table at this blend of my chosen and birth families, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the painful breakfast that had become a turning point, the special gift that had forced hidden truths into the light, my grandmother's unexpected legacy that had sustained me when I needed it most. I excused myself briefly and went to a corner of the studio where my newest piece stood covered by a cloth. I had been working on it privately, not yet ready to share it with anyone. It was a portrait of my grandmother, based on photographs I'd found among her belongings, showing her at my age, paintbrush in hand, her expression alive with creative fire. I touched the canvas gently, feeling a connection across time to the woman who had understood me before I understood myself. Thank you, I whispered. From the table came the sound of laughter. Jordan, telling one of her outrageous stories, my mother actually giggling my father's deep chuckle. The sound of human connection, imperfect but real. I returned to the table, pouring more wine for everyone. I'd like to propose a toast, I said, raising my glass. To finding your true path even when it's the difficult one, and to the courage to walk it, even when you have to walk it alone. You're not alone anymore, Jordan said, squeezing my hand. I looked around at these people who had become my support system in different ways. No, I'm not. And that's the most valuable thing I've created. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, I sat in my studio surrounded by my work canvases that told the story of my journey from that terrible breakfast to this moment of hard-earned peace. I realized that while the art world's success was gratifying, the true masterpiece was the authentic life I was building day by day, brushstroke by brushstroke. The phone call from the Museum of Modern Art the next morning, expressing interest in acquiring one of my pieces for their permanent collection, was just the cherry on top of a life that had finally beautifully become my own. Have you ever had to stand up for your passion when others didn't believe in you? How did you find the courage to stay true to yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine, and share with anyone who might need a reminder that they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations.